Hi, and welcome to The Danger in Silence. I'm Devon Gross.
I'm Hannah Woodman.
And I'm Julianne McLaughlin.
And today we are going to talk about the topic of self-love and self-compassion, and really just go over our own experiences and some research as well.
Yeah, as usual, I have my notes because I get really excited. And I dove into self-compassion, which was actually brought up to me from somebody who I'm sure you've heard in other podcasts on our network, Mary, who is from our respite program. She's the program director. And she brought up Kristin Neff, who is an educational psychologist at the University of Texas at Austin, and is really the pioneer behind self-compassion and all the research done there over the last 20 years. There are a lot of other people involved, but I would say she's really at the forefront of that movement. And I just think it's such an interesting way of looking at things. I think personally, when I think about, or when I've always thought about self-worth, I've equated it very much to self-esteem and like measurable goals of like my own worth and what it equates to. And the research says that self-esteem is not a great way of like measuring your own self-worth because it is so changeable. It is something that is based on things that sway day to day. If you have a bad day, if you do poorly on one test, if you have a rough day at work, you can really shatter your whole idea of self. And we know that now. But of course, in the 80s, 90s, we were really pushing self-esteem across the nation for child psychologists, seeing that as the pinnacle of creating like a healthy childhood. And now we're kind of looking at self-compassion and self-love and looking at it from a much more like human perspective, and that you are, by virtue of being alive, worthy of love and worthy of all of these things in life. And I just think that's a really novel idea, a wonderful way of going about it. So I don't know how you guys felt jumping into this topic.
Yeah, so for me, this has been something that I've focused on a lot in my mental health journey over the past few years. I know that when I was younger, and still now to a certain degree, I struggle a lot with perfection and a need for perfection. And some of that comes from the fact that I have ADHD and was not diagnosed until I was about 25 years old in 2021. And one of the first things my therapist said in like our conversations when we were starting out was, it sounds like when you're getting angry at yourself, it's because you think your brain should be behaving in a certain way and it's not. And so something that I learned pretty quickly was that I needed to start learning that self-compassion and give myself the grace to not be functioning at that perfect level or what I think everyone expects, like from, say, a neurotypical person or a neurotypical brain, because, you know, those standards are not really healthy for anyone because we all have moments, we all have times of imperfection, and that's okay. So giving ourselves that grace and giving myself that grace was a really important thing. But it's also something that takes practice, and, you know, I'm still working on it.
So I've definitely experienced a lot of that same things as well. And just getting frustrated with whether it be my anxiety or what other thing is going on mentally as well, of feeling like I'm doing something wrong, feeling like I should just not have anxiety, or that it is feeling as if it's my fault. And it's kind of been the same thing really of giving myself that grace, and also realizing that that doesn't mean I'm a bad person because I have anxiety or something else going on as well. I also have realized in therapy how many layers self-love and self-compassion really has. When I first started in therapy, I had no sense of self whatsoever. And so my self-love looked like figuring out what I loved. My therapist had me write a list of everything I loved. And it started with things like what kind of pizza I liked and what kind of food I liked, what kind of music I liked, because I had spent so long trying to please others that I never really thought about what I loved. And so that was a first layer of truly just getting to know myself and allowing myself to like what I like, and not trying to impress other people or trying to make other people happy. And then it started getting more into, once I kind of got that sense of self, loving myself enough to be alone, because I would have a hard time being with myself. And then after that happened, now a little bit too much because I never want to be not alone. I love being alone. Then after that, it turned more into loving, things about me. Like, I used to feel I was really annoying and all that sort of stuff. So it really taught me, I really learned how to love myself that way, love my personality, love the way I look, love how I talk, love all those things that were always insecurities. Now we're on the point of, loving myself in the way of making sure I set boundaries that are boundaries with myself, boundaries that are healthy with other people, making sure I prepare myself for success, and, realize that I am worth, doing everything that I can to make sure that I am healthy and I'm doing well. Self-love sometimes looks like leaving my house because I enjoy being alone, but also being with other people is super healthy and super good for my mental health. And then once I'm there, I'm always happy. But self-love looks different. So I think throughout this whole journey, it's been like different layers of, I used to think self-love was just lighting a candle and watching a movie and taking care of yourself and then doing affirmations in the mirror, which are great. They're all great. But self-love is more than, and self-compassion is more than just one thing. There's a whole different level of them. It's like an onion or whatever that is that Shrek says in the Shrek movie.
No! Layers! Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers. You get it. We both have layers.
The layers of an onion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's literally what I just said.
Yep.
I just remember that quote from Shrek. So
Yeah, I don't know the whole quote. I just know that it relates to the layers of an onion.
Something about that onion. I love onions. I love
you
onions
seen
and
Shrek?
garlic.
we don't need to get into that now. I was just curious.
Yes, I saw it before my local theater was shut down and then repurchased and then renovated. So I saw it when it came out in theaters.
Okay.
And then I saw it maybe like once or twice when it came out on VHS.
Yeah. It was a long time ago.
It's a long time ago.
Not to derail, I was just genuinely curious.
I watched a lot of like movies that were on TV.
Yeah.
And a lot of, we've talked about some of the movies I watched a lot. So like I had specific taste, but I did really enjoy them. So one thing that you guys are mentioning that I think really resonates with me is like, I think it was really hard for me to let go, and still is in a lot of ways. It's really hard for me to let go of negative self-talk. Like, I think so much of me thinking like, but I was really successful when I was young and I worked really, really hard and I was really successful like doing this job and doing this and going to college, like all these things. Like I was very hard on myself and negative throughout that process. And I think you kind of equate, well, then it worked fine, right? Like it was okay. And I think going through this process and realizing how much better like going to therapy and talking about like how you talk to yourself when you're going through this, and seeing research shows that this kind of negative, like motivating, quote unquote, self-talk that we use, that we see that is so common, isn't helpful. We see that it really, really can cause like fear of success, fear of failure, a great cause of procrastination, people giving up on opportunities before they even up here because of just that fear of like, what if it goes wrong? What if I'm not good enough? And seeing like the long-term consequences of this like really entrenched, angry self-talk. And it's just like, I never really thought of it as that bad. Like I was just like, it's just what motivates you. You know, it's like what keeps you going is you're like, no, I can do better and I will do better. And because I have to, because that was dumb. Like those kind of like words. And you're like, no, that's really, how would you feel like saying, would you say that to a 6-year-old who failed a spelling test? Like, no, that would be horrible. You want to boost them up. And I think seeing this, I mean, you hear it from your therapist a million times and it kind of makes sense. But I think also like working with it and reducing that negative self-talk like over the last couple of years, which I didn't realize was self-love and self-compassion. I was just like, well, I'm just reframing the question to make it last longer. Like we gotta think of things that are gonna really stick with us for a long time. Like that's what we're working for, not like self-love, self-compassion. This is like, you know, re-insulating. But I just really loved the idea of like people who are afraid of self-compassion and self-love. I mean, we'll get into something else that I thought was really interesting when we got into the research. But they worry that it could lead to self-pity or weakness or ruminating. And they found that no, those are things that you see in people who have that really negative self-talk, like that kind of ruminating, that long self-identifying with those feelings of like hatred and failure come with negative self-talk. People who are using self-compassion are much more likely to be motivated to try again, to like want to like be excited about new challenges, to let things go when something goes poorly, to see like, this isn't all about me. Like there's a lot of things going on, and to also handle traumatic events like going through a divorce. Like they're much more better equipped to handle it because they understand human connections more. Like it's not that they're so isolated and feeling it all themselves. Like they've opened up themselves to like other humans around them and really built that network of like, we're all connected. We're all experiencing pain at different times. And that means that I don't have to feel so isolated every single time I fail. And I really liked that. I thought that was great. But yeah, it did remind me of when I read that article, because they were also like, it can really help with romantic and platonic relationships too, because you're less isolated. And by thinking yourself as like, I'm experiencing something that's painful right now, and so many other people in the world are experiencing something similar, and we're all like going to get through it. It's just like a part of being human. And that allows you to be compassionate and have empathy and be there for someone else. And it can really build relationships and like make you a better friend, make you a better partner, make you more open to building relationships in general. And, you know, when you're isolating yourself and closing yourself off without even like meaning to, but using that really negative self-talk, and really, it is isolating. It is like, this is just about me. I'm the one who messed up and I'm the one who needs to fix it. And like, nobody else can change this but me. Like that is going to affect the way you interact with people. And when you have that kind of like anger and self-hatred, like it's gonna affect the way you come off to other people too. Like it's just gonna be a part of it. And I just thought that was really important. Like when you show love to yourself, it's much easier to show love to those around you. And it's a real skill that you have to build.
Yeah, and for me, I think there's also an aspect where being able to show my self-compassion is also makes it easier for me to believe that someone else will show me that compassion. So I know I used to shut off a lot more because I didn't have that compassion for myself. So I wasn't going to share with someone else how deeply I was struggling, or those catastrophic moments, or the moments that at least felt catastrophic, that absolutely definitely were not. That I wasn't willing to share that because I'm not showing compassion to myself. So why is someone else going to? So it's important to start loving yourself, and then that makes it easier as well to accept love from others.
Yeah. Go right ahead.
No, I just really love what you said.
Me too. Me too.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and like Hannah had mentioned about this, you wouldn't tell a 6-year-old that they're bad for failing a spelling test. I mean, that brought up 2 great points. Is the inner child work is incredible, and that can really help with the self-love and self-compassion. But that would be a whole nother thing to get into with a therapist. But also just thinking about having a 6-year-old and having my own child, I get really, we talk all the time about if you say you can't do something, your brain turns off and then you can't do it because your brain is shut off and it's not going to do it. Where if you say you can do it, you'll be able to do it. Or instead of saying I can't do that, say I can't do that yet. Shout out Gabby's Dollhouse. Great TV show. But her favorite word is yet, is saying I can't do that yet. And so a lot of times I hear my own voice in my head being like, oh, you need to practice what you preach. Because I don't want my 6-year-old to feel bad about him not being able to do something. I want him to set boundaries with people and show the self-love that, kind of like you were saying, that, love himself so that he doesn't let other people, not like he has to show himself compassion and so that way he understands that other people should show him compassion. So it's been interesting watching it with a child, and I think it's definitely interesting that differentiating what Hannah had said about self-esteem and self-compassion, just in the sense that I think as a parent, it is always, you want your kid to feel so good about themselves, but then you also think about that, oh, well, if I tell them they're so smart, and then what if they do get a failing obviously you want to tell your kid they're smart, but if you put so much thing of I want my kid to feel smart, I want my kid to do this, then what happens when they do fail a test? And so it's been interesting trying to teach a child self-love, and then that's really turned around and been, I am so hard. Why am I so hard on myself when I would never want him to be hard on himself? Or the biggest thing is that of saying I can't do this yet, and really just trying to remind myself that it's okay if I don't get things on the first try, and then it's okay if I'm not perfect at things, or it's okay that maybe other people can do it, and it's okay that I can't do it yet. It doesn't mean I'm not going to be able to do it. And I thought about that earlier with self-love and self-compassion. I think can also be affected, like everything, with social media. Seeing all the things that people are doing all the time, seeing these filtered pictures on social media, I think really can affect your self-love and your self-compassion as well, because that negative talk bit can come about. Like as a parent, it's like, well, why am I not doing that with my kid? Like this, they're getting all the fancy family photos and they're taking all these vacations and they're doing all this. It's like, why I'm not good because I'm not taking care of, I'm taking care of my kid, but I'm not doing that. And I think that it can come about with other ways as well of, oh, well, they're every single day they're doing all this super productive stuff and they're doing all these things, and like, why can't I do that? Or like, why can't I go to the gym 5 days a week when they're doing it 5 days a week? What's wrong with me? And so I think that also can affect your compassion, your self-love. But I also like how Hannah mentioned that really realizing how much that negative self-talk is not good for you, and that the positive self-love is showing yourself, or positive self-talk is showing yourself that self-love. And then what Julianne said about how that, having compassion for yourself is showing to yourself that you deserve for other people to have compassion for you as well.
Yeah, and I really liked what you were saying there about showing that like you deserve this compassion. But there was a really wonderful point that McLean Hospital made, which is, what can prevent us from self-compassion and self-love. And I think there is something that comes up a lot more in this journey to self-compassion than a lot of people maybe want to talk about. And that would be they pointed out, they put it so precisely, what prevents us from being kind to ourselves? And it's the fear of negative emotions. And they really talked about what if you experienced a challenging background or emotional abuse or things in your childhood that were really difficult? What if you have negative self-talk because that's how the adults around you talked about you to you, and that's been internalized for a long time, and how that might make it a lot harder when first approaching this journey, but all that much more important. And to just talk about the idea of you're just as worthy as going on this journey. You are definitely worthy of support in going through this journey. Highly recommend looking for a therapist. If you need help finding a therapist, you can always reach out to the NAMI Maine Helpline. If you're listening from this from out of the state of Maine, reach out to your local NAMI or your NAMI affiliate, and they can help you find a therapist in your area. But having somebody to help guide you through these emotions as they pop up in the journey. And they also brought up something that was hit me right in the gut, where I was oh gosh. When people who are abused do practice self-compassion, the experience may highlight the care they should have received all along. And this illumination can create a sense of loss, and how that is very worthy of support and healing, and something that I think, if this feels like an overwhelming undertaking, or you feel I can't undo the circuit board in my head is hardwired, we can't undo it, this is just the system, this is how I'm wired, this is how we're going the rest of the way, that's probably not true. There's a lot of things you can learn. It just takes time, and to allow yourself the experience of having support, and allow yourself the time and space to grow and learn new skills, because you deserve to have a more loving and compassionate experience of yourself. I just thought that was really important. Because I think a lot of us in some way have had some sort of trying experience, and there are a lot of survivors around us or people who we know and love who have traumatic backgrounds, who definitely deserve this love. And I hope that they are seeking it and experiencing mindful self-compassion, so you can go through those maybe painful emotions as they're arising, experience them and let them go, and not feel as heavily impacted by them every time they arise. So I just wanted to put that out there.
That was very beautiful. I love that you said that. And such a good, important reminder that of those things, as well as it's going to take time. I've been working, and for me, it took time. And most likely it will take time. I've been working for 3 years on it. Hardcore, as over, I feel like over your life here and there, you work on things, but I've been working really hard for the last 3 years. And honestly, it's come about having to practice self-compassion when it comes to learning self-compassion. Sometimes I'll be hard on myself, and then wow, I thought I was getting better at this. Why am I hard on myself? And then it's that, and not practicing self-compassion about being hard on yourself for not doing it. And I think that it just is something, we are all humans, and sometimes it's not going to be perfect, just where it can't be perfect at everything, including not always having that self-compassion, but just doing it as much as you can, as much as possible, and just allowing yourself to learn and to grow. And just, realizing there's always new things to learn about self-compassion, and always new things to really process and figure out what works best for you. And that's another thing as well, is it's going to look different for everybody. As I said, with me, a whole bunch of different layers that really have come out, but everyone's different. Not everyone has the same internalized message, the same experiences, the same, things that they have trouble with when it comes to self-compassion. So it definitely is important to figure out what works best for you, and to be kind to yourself on the journey to self-love and self-compassion. And it's just a really exciting topic, because everyone's worthy of that. Everyone's worthy to love themselves, and everyone's worthy to be kind to themselves. And I think that it's just so important to remember that you are worth it, and you deserve that love. You deserve that love from yourself. You deserve that love from other people. No matter if you don't think you deserve it, there's also, fake it till you make it as well. And it will come about because you deserve it. I was going to say, to quote Taylor Swift, but it's not a Taylor Swift line.
Yeah, I think something that I wanted to jump in on that I heard you say, Devon, is that that piece of why am I being hard on myself in a moment when you kind of fall back in a little bit into an old habit. And for me, one of those I will fall into that habit, and I'll start thinking, why am I like this? Or I am really angry with myself for this happening, or for responding to a situation in that way. But now I can see that moment happening, and at a certain point I can say, wait, stop, hold on, and I can pause myself to say, I'm being negative in this situation. Let's reframe and adjust. And I think it's important to emphasize that ability to be aware of when you're falling back into that habit is a win. That is improvement, that is growth. And so that's recognizing those small victories and those wins as wins is also really important in that self-compassion journey.
Absolutely.
I love that you brought that up, because that is like my biggest thing, is I'll get so frustrated myself, and my therapist will be like, do you know what you were like 3 years ago when I met you? Like, do you know who that person was? Like, I know you're so hard on you in any aspect, but especially that, just like, you're so hard on yourself, and then you don't, like, I love the thing too that people suggest is to like sit and stop and like think about how far you've come, like in any aspect of your life, with whatever you've done, but especially that, like, think how much that internal monologue has changed, and think about how much you've done. But it works with everything as well, to get that self-love and self-compassion. Like, feel like you're not doing a good job on something, like stop and think about, like, when you first started, like how much has changed, how much things have grown. And I really love that, Julianne.
Absolutely. And if you're like just thinking of starting this journey. Yeah, I remembered what it looks like when the Hobbits do it, but I was like, I can't remember the words. And I was like, right, it's the journey that they're all going on as a team. Kristin Neff has a pretty good website with like free resources. So if you are like interested in, if you're somebody who like me is like really interested in reading studies, like she has a bibliography of all of her published studies relating to self-compassion. She also has a self-compassion test, which I'm always like, you don't want to be hard on yourself. But if it's something that you're not sure whether or not it's something you want to focus on, then maybe this could be a tool you could use to see if it's something that you're like, I'm not really that hard on myself, and really think about it. And you can take the test and then see like, if it is something like, it's like, oh, I am more negatively speaking to myself than I realized. Because I thought I was like, I'm just productively minded. And then I was like, oh no, I'm like kind of like a bully. They have a pretty short test that dives into it and just looks at kind of how you talk to yourself and those different aspects of yourself. And then they have a lot of different guided practices that you can go through. A lot of it is like mindfulness, different affirmations, different things you can do to kind of meditate on to like start this journey really like gently and kindly. And so we'll put those in the show notes so that you have, and of course we'll have we only did really 4 articles today because I scaled it down because Kristin Neff's entire bibliography is listed on her website. So we scaled down the notes in that way. But just so that you have access to those resources. But I wanted to see if we had any other ideas or things that we wanted to talk about related to this, to kind of closing thoughts relating to self-love, self-compassion.
I'll just say what I said again. It's just remember that you're worth self-love and you're worth self-compassion, and that you deserve it.
Anything else?
I think ending on that note, on the you are worth it, is probably the best place to land.
I certainly agree. Wonderful. And as is tradition on this podcast, close out with a fun fact. So you can collect them all. If you listen to all our episodes, you'll learn a lot of weird, interesting facts about us. Mm-hmm. Crack some of those passwords.
Really get to know us as a person.
Well, you listen close enough. Yeah. Anyone want to start in particular? Or I can go first if you want.
Sure.
Okay. So I, through a series of misunderstandings and poorly placed gestures of kindness from neighbors, thought that I was being stalked by a haunted Woody doll with the string that said, "There's a snake in my boot." And I thought I had to fix it by cutting out its voice box and digging 2 grave pits in my backyard and burying it separately. Because my dad let me watch a lot of sci-fi under the age of 5. So next fun fact.
I love that. Mine is on the self-love topic. I was thinking about when I first started this whole journey and I was making a list of like things that I liked and things I enjoyed. One of the biggest thing was my favorite color for like 6 years was yellow. And I realized that's not my favorite color, which sounds really silly, but doesn't sound silly, but it sounds silly that I like had it as my fake favorite color for a long time. But I realized that like my favorite color is actually pink. It's just that my sister liked pink and I didn't want to be associated with my sister. And I thought yellow was cool, but it wasn't my favorite color. But the fun fact about it is that my son, I stopped liking yellow when he was 3 years old, and he still doesn't let me live it down. He'll be like, "Your favorite color is yellow." I'm like, "No, it's pink." He's like, "You can't change your favorite color, Mom." I'm like, "Yes, I can. I can change my favorite color." He's so mad at me still. He'll tell people, he'll be like, "My mom's favorite color is pink, but it used to be yellow. She changed it." And I'm like, "Excuse me, you were 3 years old. I'm so
You're
sorry."
Like, excuse me, I went on a self-love journey and discovered some things, sir.
Exactly.
That was an impressively long memory, though.
Yeah. He has a scarily long memory. Like it's very scary because he'll say, "Remember when this happened?" I'm like, "That happened when you were 2. Why do you remember that?" And then he never lets you forget anything whatsoever. So that's my fun fact. My favorite color is pink. Yeah.
Right on, samesies.
Nice.
That's not your fun fact. What's your favorite color?
My favorite color kind of depends on the day, but it's probably purple or green.
I love that.
Yeah.
Those are great
Yeah,
colors.
so I think your son would be very angry with me for changing my favorite color on a regular basis.
Yeah, that would not be okay.
This is not acceptable.
His has been
No
blue
way.
since the day he could talk, and it has and will never change.
Things are going to change. He's going to see all sorts of different colors, and then he's going to be like, "Oh, man." He's going to write an apology letter to you. He'll say sorry. He'll be like, I need an apology letter from you. So what's your fun fact?
Yeah, so my fun fact is that I would say when I was in middle school, I was very curious if I could teach my dogs to sneeze on command. So I tried it and I did successfully do that. So for several years, they would, when they were begging for food, they would just come over and sneeze at your feet instead of bark.
That is so funny. I love that.
I adore everything about that.
Right? That is so fun.
I really, really love that. Oh, beautiful. A wonderful way to end the episode. Thank you again for joining us, and see you next time on
The Danger in Silence.